opportunity to make the initial presentation of Mr. Robert Culp's first convention appearance. It's one of our better friends here at SPYFEST. He's known as Don McGregor, and he does have a table with Mr. Culp. Don is selling a ton of unpublished, never before released comic merchandise based on James Bond, first African-American comic characters, the whole 9 yards. He'll fill you in on that. He actually did For Detectives Inc., a black and white private eye team based on the mean streets of New York. And he also did basically the first graphic novel for the comics market. He is a very, very good friend of Mr. Culp. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce someone to you who knows Mr. Culp better than I do. So let's give a nice warm welcome to the incredibly fantastic, nice gentleman known as Mr. Don McGregor.
Thank you, Mark. You know, some people question whether there can be love at first sight. And for me, 10 o'clock in the year 1965, the first time I saw I Spy, I fell in love with Robert Culp and Bill Cosby. I was never much for joining things, but I loved guys who had friendship and loyalty and honor in Netflix. These guys had it in spades. Robert Culp is not just an actor, not just a director, but he's all of those. He's also a splendid storyteller. And storytellers reflect our time, and they stab at our hearts, and they tell us universal truths, and they tell us subjective truths. Please welcome one of my personal heroes, Robert Culp! Hello, Bob.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Hi.
Good evening, good afternoon, whatever the hell time it is. And back to you.
Gee, thanks, Bob. Did I take a stage fright? Listen, let's talk a little bit about your career as a writer and as an actor. Your first TV series was Track Down. Hobie Gilman, Castleton, Texas Ranger. You wrote the very last script that was aired on Track Down. And you did something that's regular on TV now, but not in your time. You went back to continuity. You actually did your script, went back to the very first episode of Track Down and picked up where it left off. Why did you do that? Did you have any troubles doing it? And talk about the writing in that show.
Track Down was created by a man named John Robinson. For those of you who are real aficionados, you may remember that he also created a thing called Dragnet for Jack Webb. He had perfected through Jack Webb's persona that clipped form of performing for the actor that you do want to stay on paper, to try to show the actor how to come to that rhythm in the character. When he wrote Track Down for 4-Star, before they cast me, the script was clearly supposed to be the Western Dragnet. I don't know if you all remember, but some of you will. At that time, there were 36 Westerns on television, by actual count. 36 Westerns at the same time. No wonder we chewed it up and mashed it into the ground. When I showed up, they had hired me by accident, really. And I said, I'm not going to do Western Dragnet. I'm going to do my own show. And they said, well, you can't do that because we sold it to CBS as the Western Dragnet. So it became a running battle between me and the producer from that point forward. In the middle of the second year, the beginning of the second year of Track Down, Steve McQueen showed up and did his pilot off my show as a spin-off. And McQueen show sold and was on the air overlapping overlapping track down by, I think, a half a year or something like that.
Right.
Toward the end of the run of track down. In the midst of all of this, I had never forgotten that the pilot, which was actually a Zane Grey Theater spin-off, that I never knew was a pilot. When they told me that the pilot had sold, can't pack your bags and go to Los Angeles, and I said, you're nuts, I'm an actor in New York, I'm just starting to really get hot on Broadway. I'm not going to Hollywood, for Christ's sake. Give me a break. And they said, fine, don't go to Hollywood. You'll have to go to England to get a job because they will put out an injunction against you and you'll never work in this country again. So I did wind up going to Los Angeles. This was in the early part of '57, and very bitter about the whole thing. And yet the pilot stuck with me to the point where I wanted to recreate something that would fit that, refer back to that pilot, because they'd never done so. And I also wanted to write a piece for my then wife, who was a marvelous actress, that would be very special and set her apart as a woman who could handle a gun, really handle a gun, and a bitter woman as well. So that's how that was the tie-in to the episode that was called Back to Crawford, which was, I think it was either last or next to last of the episodes that we did on Track Down.
Now, was that the first script that you'd written that actually got produced in the film?
Yeah, I had been writing for a long time, but plays, mostly plays and full-length plays and so forth. And I had never been actually published. I had never, well, I was published as a short story writer, but I had never been published as a playwright. I had never had anything produced. So yes, that episode was the first thing I ever wrote. I sold, and it got on the air, and you can follow. It's a strange thing what happens to you when you can actually follow the trajectory of the original idea goes to paper, the paper goes to the producer says yes, and you make the movie, and then you see it on the screen. And I, for the first time, was able to observe that entire process, and it just knocked me for a loop. I said, this is for me. And I've been, this is for me ever since.
Because you were taking it from your original vision and then seeing the reality of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes those will be two separate things.
Yes. Or
did your wife, at the time, did she learn gun handling from you? Because I know you practiced diligently at it.
Yeah. I was pretty good, if I do say so myself. I was taught how to fast draw by the fastest draw there was in Hollywood, a man named Arvo Ojala, a Swedish gentleman, no longer with us, a little tiny man who was... Sammy Davis once swore to me on a stack of Bibles that he had seen this guy perform this trick where, with his gun hand, he'd give you $3 silver. You make your mark on the back of the $3 silver, whatever it is, so that it's specific and you know it's yours. They are yours. $3 silver, puts them on the back of his hand, go for his gun, well, toss him up in the air just a little, go for the gun, and fan 3 shots and hit all 3 before they hit the ground. And Sammy swore that he saw this Arvo Ojala do that trick, at least once.
Wow. Speaking of Sammy Davis Jr., you now wrote Kane's 100 episode.
Yeah.
Multiple part question. Sammy's in that episode.
Yeah.
Both of you are known as fast guns in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay. In that episode, you wrote it. It's kind of based loosely on a Frank Sinatra type singer.
Yeah.
In Las Vegas, mixed up with Lamar.
Right.
One, did you ever hear anything from Frank on that? Also, while Sammy's in the episode, he's sitting in the audience like this, like you guys. You guys are Sammy. Bob is up here singing, and Sammy's voice is coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
That is strange.
I went to Sam and I said, okay, you're going to teach me how to sing. He said, oh, get out. I can't do that. Nobody can do that. You can't do it. do your voice. Just leave it up to me. I'll pick a couple of, what do you call, standards that are in public domain or are already owned by MGM, which was the company that was producing Kane's 100. And I'll do the songs, I'll send them to you, and then you'll learn to lip sync them, that's all. So he did, he was in Boston, and he recorded the songs, sent them back, and I forget how the play came, but they made a copy for me to work with at home of the two songs to learn to lip sync to them. And then they did nothing further. They did not make a playback disc. They didn't make it then. They waited, because this was, I don't know, it's a couple of months before we did the show. Then they went to the original tape, and they recorded the original tape on the scratch disc, the playback disc that I was going to actually sing to when we shot the scene. But something had happened. The tape had shrunk. So it was always going to be out of sync, no matter what. And finally, we had the most god-awful time trying to record it. Well, when it was recorded, what happened was that you could only cut to me for a few seconds, very briefly, before I would start to go out of sync. I would start to go out of sync. And there was nothing to be done for it. You can't really notice it, but that's only because it's very cleverly cut. And Sammy agreed to do a cameo in the show because he was a dear friend and had already done my voice, and I said it will lend credibility to the character as being someone like Frank if you'll just show up backstage and we'll play with the guns and fool around and that'll be it. He said, terrific, okay, throw me. So he did, and we had one kind of nice little scene together, and that was how it all kind of, it was a series of, people were much more relaxed about things in those days. You just did things because people were friends. Today, it's a federal case to try to get anything like that done.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it seems to me, Bob, not on Track Down, or any of the westerns that you did, but maybe you're right for now. But it seems to me on Kane's 100 shows you doing some of your gun tricks on film, the most elaborate gun tricks that you'd ever done in film.
Oh, by the way, in that show, the guy I told you about who taught me to draw,
right,
Arlo Jala, appears in the show.
Oh, does he?
He does fast draw to, as the gangsters put it, to amuse the ladies at this garden party. He does some gun tricks, and I do some gun tricks, and what did you ask me?
I asked you if that was the most, in terms of film, using the numerous gun tricks. You really started over the shoulders, on the
I'll tell you something.
And I would say Kane's 100 probably has the most.
No, it doesn't. No, Track Down did. But I once developed a trick that I did once in front of the cameraman on Track Down, but the camera wasn't turning. I drew and fired and fanned two, and it was so fast that it looked like one. You couldn't even, not even at 24 frames a second, you couldn't separate all three. But I had three empty casings, and I had fired three, and it sounded like one. And the cameraman said, geez, you got to get that on camera, that's great. And I said, okay. We went 20 takes. I couldn't do it again.
I hate when that happens.
I hate it when it happens too.
So one last question about that. Did Sinatra ever get in touch with you about this role that you had written?
No, but Sammy did.
Okay.
We were talking about it years later. This is many years later. We were talking about Kane's 100. And he said, yeah, it was terrific. And I really loved being on your show and everything. I didn't work for the next year. And I said, what? What are you talking about? He said, my deal was, under the table, sort of. I mean, it was a handshake deal. We didn't have a contract. I worked at the Sands several times a year because Frank was there. But I was alone doing my own act several times a year at the Sands. And after that show came out, I didn't work for a solid year at the Sands. I said, why? He said, what you didn't understand, and I didn't bother you with it at the time, was the story you came up with was true. Or true enough to make Jack and Trotter very uncomfortable and to get mad at Sammy to the degree that he didn't hire him for a whole year. I had some character elements built in that I just dreamed up, and it turned out they were so. He had problems with his family problems anyway, which made sense to me, and apparently to God also, because they had actually happened to the poor man. And he never said a word about it, because what can you say when it's just personal stuff? He never said a word about it, but he took it out on Sammy for an entire year.
That's too bad.
Weird.
Yeah. That's too bad.
Let us jump forward.
Going forward, in that time period, Bob, you're doing a lot of guest starring roles,
Yeah.
a lot of TV series, but the one you're known most for is Outer Limits. And you actually did 2 episodes before the damn thing even aired. I believe you filmed both Architects of Fear and Corpus Earthling. Corpus Earthling's like the 8th episode. Damn show couldn't have been on here much.
Oh, I see what you mean. I'm not sure about that part. But yeah, the Architects of Fear and Corpus Earthling were first, and then came A Demon with a Glass Hand.
Right.
Oh, and I got to tell you a story about Demon with a Glass Hand. A lot of people here know that show episode, and the reason is very simple. I once had Harlan Ellison tell me the truth of that episode of Outer Limits. It made more money than any other episode in the history, 1-hour episode, in the history of television. And that record stands today.
Now, how did you do that, Bob?
Who knows? But it did. They tracked its district, its syndication, and wound up simplifying it down to this particular episode having been shown more times, thereby earning more money in rentals than any other 1-hour episode ever made.
Wow. And also, you're working with Conrad Hall, who becomes one of the great American cinematographers. He's just starting out. He does some amazing stuff. Any thoughts of working with Conrad?
Yeah, he was an amazing guy. But he was the DP, and Bill Fraker, William Fraker, who's gone on to almost the same kind of fame that Connie Hall had, was his operator, camera operator. The two of them on the same show were, to my way of thinking, they were the difference between Outer Limits just being okay and being as remarkable as it was, because we didn't have any money. I mean, there was no money for this thing. When I went to the makeup man on Architects of Fear, and I said, what the hell are we going to do for the makeup? Because this is in many stages, it's all really elaborate. What are we going to do? He said, well, let's start with the beginning. And he reached into a garbage can that was standing on the set. I swear before God, he reached into a garbage can and pulled out a paper cup. And that was the foundation of the makeup. He glued the paper cup to my face. And then he started to build on top of that, with some little tubes coming out and a lot of plasticine, and pretty soon you had a full makeup. When it was all done, I took it home to sort of amuse my kids. Scared the living hell out of them. Oh, God. Can we come up more to the present?
Yeah, we're going to
This is really ancient history.
Yeah, I know. We're going to get one last question. Meeting Harlan Ellison. I've heard Harlan's
I
version
was sitting on the set the first night of Demon with a Glass Hand, outside. The whole thing was shot in the Bradbury Building, downtown Los Angeles. I was sitting on the sidewalk. It's the middle of the night. This smallish gentleman rushed up to me and in the loudest voice imaginable announced, "I am Harlan Ellison, and I wrote this show specifically for you." But I can't tell you, it was very loud. Harlan, when he gets excited, is extremely loud. And I said, "Gee, that's terrific, and it's a wonderful script and everything." "Yes, it is. And let me tell you, it was very difficult." And it went on and on. I said, "This guy's putting me on." He wasn't. Only later did I realize that there was part of that in everything about Harlan. We are the dearest of friends to this day. And he's got a zipper from here to here now, and loves to show it to people. He's a survivor.
He certainly is. Okay, now going forward to something called I Spy. I know Sheldon Leonard first approached you about doing the show.
No, that's not true.
Well, no, you
I wrote a script for a half-hour spy show, and I took it to Carl Reiner, who was the only guy in any position of authority that I really knew in television, because I'd met him through Sammy. And he said, "Well, you come to me the 1 year I'm not doing anything, I'm getting out of television, I'm going to go make my movie," which was The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. And he said, "But I liked your script. I passed it on to a guy named Sheldon Leonard. Do you remember who he was?" I said, "Yeah." He played the bartender in It's a Wonderful Life, and he played a whole bunch of gangsters. He said, "That's the guy. He's right over there. Just follow this rail all the way around to his office, and he wants to talk to you." So I went over there, and I spent about the next 4 hours in Sheldon Leonard's office. Oh, God. Stories, funny stories to people inside the business, but not outside. A very funny story about a photograph in his front office, in front of his secretary Skippy's desk. It was a beautifully designed drawing room shot. French windows, French doors, the sun streaming in across the Oakassaw Road, just catching a glimpse of the grand piano. Gorgeous room, and you say, "Okay, so it's a gorgeous room, so what? Why put it on the wall?" Then in the middle of the sunlight on the Oakassaw rug, there's a rattlesnake coiled. And then you look down and there's a little brass plaque underneath that just simply says, "Jim Aubrey." Well, I got one little laugh out of that. Nobody knows him. Okay, 2 laughs, including Earl. And I didn't really know who Jim Aubrey was, but I was later to learn. Anyhow, he was a network executive. And
makes sense to me.
Then I said, "I think you're going to like this guy, even if I don't know who Jim Aubrey is." And I went into his office, and he said, "Kid, I like your idea, but I like mine better." I said, "What's yours?" Skeptically. And he said, 2 guys working for the government as spies go around the world posing as a professional tennis player and his trainer. Period. One of them's black. Period." That was it. I said, "You're right. Your idea is better than mine." So he said, "Will you wait for me?" And I said, "Not too long. I mean, I got a family to feed." He said, No, it'll be this year." So I went home and I said, "I don't know if I'm being crazy here, but something about this guy really makes me believe in him." And a couple of months went by, and he found Kaz through a series of events, again through Carl Reiner,
Right.
Who had discovered Bill, as it turned out, through listening to his 16-year-old son, Rob Reiner, tell him when he got home one evening what a wonderful comedian there had been on the Johnny Carson show. And you really ought to check him out, Dad. And he did. And then that's when he told Sheldon that maybe this kid, Bill Cosby, is who you're looking for, because nobody had ever heard of Bill Cosby. And that was how the beginning of that all happened.
Okay,
well, anyway.
When the first script came along, Bob, and I think it was sometime between the first and Shaw being filmed, you guys went overseas, you did a pilot episode, and NBC was going to pass on it. But in the meantime, you were writing original scripts for I Spy. And what becomes actually the pilot, So Long Patrick Henry, you wrote.
Yeah, I think you have stated pretty much the fact, yeah.
So
I wrote a bunch of scripts, and one of them was picked to open the series.
So building from, I guess, the original script, you started to develop these characters in your head and talking with Bill?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Going from the original script that you guys had filmed, originally, Ferris and Shaw, then you and Bill start talking about the characters, history for them, and how they would be together?
Okay, for the next 4 months, there was 4 months downtime between the pilot and when we were supposed to start shooting the series. And I went to Sheldon and I said, are you really going to make them all, no matter what? And he said, I'm going to make all 13, because he had a fair play deal, which is very, very unusual. Sheldon was in a unique position in those days of immense individual strength without a studio behind him, and immense respect in the business. So they'd given him a fair play deal for up to 13. So he said, yeah, I'm going to make them all. I said, well, most guys say that, but then they make 3 or 4, and then they say, well, that's enough, and they keep the rest of the money, and just hope that one of those first 3 or 4 will actually work in terms of being the exact right mix and getting it. I said, no, I'm not, that's not the way we're going to do it. We're going to do all 13, whatever the hell happens. I said, okay.
That's great.
Because this guy never said anything he didn't mean. And so I went home and I began to write. I didn't tell anybody about it.
Right.
And the thing that had already happened was that Kaz and I had formed a rapport, and we talked on the telephone during this 4-month downtime every day without fail. We spent 45 minutes to an hour on the telephone wherever he was. I was in my office writing, and he was all over the place doing personal appearances.
Right.
But we would just talk. He knew without my saying it, and I knew what he knew. We needed to do this if I was ever going to be able to figure out a step above what the writers were going to be writing who didn't really know Bill Cosby and Robert Culp.
Right.
I knew them, and Bill was helping me to know them, and I could pretty soon arrive at the dialogue the way it ought to shape. It ought to shape itself for the two of us coming out of our mouths. And so I did, and I tried to hone it tighter and tighter, something that usually just the actors do on the stage, because they get a finished product, and they do the best they can with it.
Right. Well, and a remarkable chemistry. When they talk about chemistry on film, I think, Bob, you and Bill were two of the champions of all time. And now we're going into a script that you've been nominated for an Emmy for, The Warlord. Can we run the clip for The Warlord?
Did you get through?
Yeah, they got the signal and the fix. Plane will be here about dawn.
Remarkable.
What?
Thoughts. Joining. Separating, going on. The curse of memory.
Why a curse?
In all memory is implicit loss. Are you familiar with the ancient form of the haiku?
A little.
The long night. The sound of water says what I think. They translate poorly. There is a game I remember seeing In England, a game of child's play, to you perhaps quite common, but to me strange and fascinating. The children dance about the chairs. One by one, the chairs are removed, and the children who have lost a place in the game drop out. One by one. A whole history of activity and laughter and shouting about the chairs. The act of winning. To win, the child must finish alone. One child and one chair, and at last the game is over. Do you know it?
Of course.
My family have been rulers in China for 1,000 years. A whole history of activity about the chairs. I am the last child in my family. With me, the line runs out and the game is over. You're still a young man. It's almost dawn, another half hour. I'm 1,000 years old, Mr. Robinson. If I were to marry a woman not Chinese, my soldiers would leave me. They have sworn an oath to serve me until death, but that would break it. I am not engaged in war any longer, not even in battle. This is a holding action, a habit, a winding down. It can only end in defeat.
Rob, that's great writing and wonderful performing. Can you speak a little bit about the genesis of the Warlord, what made you want to do it, to write it, and to also play the role?
To tell you the truth, I can't remember what was the original impetus. I can't imagine whatever gave me the idea that I could get away with this. It was the hubris of youth, certainly. Although I'm not sure, but what I started with the accent, I don't know where the hell it came from. It just seemed like a logical thing, because the girl who was it? No, I'm picking through all the things I can think of. I cannot remember why I did this.
Okay, why did the Warlord appeal to you so much? You obviously it appealed to you so much you're willing to go through makeup stages for months and then to
I spent 6 months on the makeup alone in John Chambers' backyard. I went to him first, knowing that we had a conditional green light, and it was really curious. Sheldon Leonard, the boss, never asked me, could I play it? He never said, what about the makeup? He never said, what about playing two characters the same scene? What about the accent? What the hell kind of accent are you going to use to get away with this? He never asked me a single word. This is the guy whose show this was. He produced it. It was his baby from top to bottom. And he never asked me a word. I guess he just figured that I could do it, or I wouldn't have written the damn thing in the first place. So I went to John Chambers originally and said, no hair. And he groaned. He said, no. I don't want any Fu Manchu. There's no Fu Manchu stuff in here. There will be no hair on the face. He said, you really know how to pitch a curve. So it did take that long, 6 months. And we'd do the makeup again, and then we'd shoot a little bit of 8mm film so that I could show Sheldon, something in the middle of all of this. And he never asked for it, and I never showed it to him. And The only thing that I said when, I do remember this.
Okay.
This is important. By the time I had done the 6 months work on the makeup, the word filtered down to me, we're not going to do the show and we can't afford it.
Wow.
Which absolutely just slayed me. And Leon Chulik, who was the overseas line producer for all of Ice,
Right.
for I Spy the second 2/3, I mean after the very beginning, he came by my dressing room and said, have you still got a copy of that Warlord thing? Because I'd given up on it. He said, yes, I did. Yes, here, have two. And I gave him a couple of copies, and away he went, overseas to Spain, of all places. Why even think about Spain for this? Because it was originally a Chinese concept. The word came back from Leon. He figured it out how to do it on the budget we needed to shoot. And all of a sudden, my heart leapt, and I knew I was going to do it. And now we took the finishing touches on everything and got ready to go. And we shot in Madrid at Estudios Moros for 11 days. Unheard of in a television episode to shoot 11 days. But we did shoot 11 days, and we knew we were going to do it. But in Spain, everything was less expensive, and so we could get away with it.
Just one last question then, Bob. In terms of acting, now you're acting against yourself. Any particular thought you had of approaching that, how you're going to do that?
No, the only fortunate part is that you don't have to do it with mirrors. You can do it at different times of the day, and you readjust your head. I'm playing this character now, and I'm playing that character then.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, let's go to Home to Judgment, which I understand is your favorite of the I Spy episodes, and Bill's.
As I Spy episodes go, this was Bill's and my favorite, yeah.
Okay, can we run the Home to Judgment clip?
Green eyes. Helen O'Connell, Bob Eberly. 1941.
Toilet's that hungry?
You look starved, child. It's fresh from last night. Dig in now.
Thank you.
Smiling Jack. And the Cats and Jammer Kids. Flash Gordon. And, Phantom. Terry and the Pirates. Oh, what a lousy way to come home.
great? Isn't that great stuff? Just first of all, somebody who loves comics.
Before we go any further, this show would be about 1/4 as good as it is, except for the music. And it so happens that we have with us today the guy who created all of the music for I Spy,
Earl Hagen. Well, tremendous music. Everything from the theme song, and I've told you this, I know, but I say it on stage. You know how Bill Cosby had that thing about running music? The kids they had all the running music. I Spy was my running music, and I'm 58 now, and I don't run much, but when I do, or if I'm just running in my head, it's the I Spy thing that's still there. Thank you, Earl, for all of your great music. And a wonderful score for Home to Judgment, too. And I just want to say thank you to you, Bob, because in the 1960s, whenever Hollywood had people read comic books, it was shorthand that people were mentally slow. Robert Culp and Bill Cosby were the first ones, the heroes of the show, to read comic books by the poolside, or to reminisce about them very fondly.
Well,
thank you, Robert.
Well, they were a little slow, you know. What can I say?
Now, talk about the Genesis to Home to Judgment. I believe this has some real personal resonance for you.
Yeah, it sure does. This was a simple story about these two guys coming from a place of desperate trouble, which is never defined. We never find out what it is they have done or what has been discovered about them. They're just on the run from generic heavies who are out to annihilate them. But the point was, I wanted to get them home. We never dealt with something like home for us. We did it in phone calls that Bill would make home to his mom, and that was as close as we ever got to anything like home. These two characters, supposedly my great aunt and my great uncle, were in fact drawn very closely on my grandparents, my mother's father and mother.
Joseph Collins.
Joe Collins and his wife Mabel. And they were precisely these kind of people. And I've asked Bill why he feels the way he feels about this show, and he has always said because the characters are so clear and so simple and so down to earth. And everything that we did usually was very sophisticated, and this was supposed to be, and it was, the opposite of that. There was nothing sophisticated about it. It was the irony and the dynamic that made this thing work was Kelly's deep need not to reveal himself to these people that were his closest living relatives.
Well, I guess the line that brings it home most to me, Bob, is when he holds up the dynamite to his aunt and says, "You wouldn't know me if you know me only as a child. It doesn't exist anymore. This is what I am now." And he holds out the dynamite and he says, "And this is what I brought you." And I guess that really sums it up right there. That's beautiful stuff, Bob, and wonderfully done. Let's move on to Hickey and Boggs really quick, because that's, you wrote, co-wrote and directed and starred in, and you and Bill back together again on the big screen.
Yeah, and it was kind of, H&B was, for many years, I guess, until Cos hit with the Cosby Show in, what was it, 86 or 87. It was the thing that, up until that point, both of us felt the same way about Hickey and Boggs. We were both more proud of that than anything we'd ever done, certainly as actors. Or, you know, it was that good, but it was that far ahead of its time. It was at least on the curve, a good 10 to 15 years ahead of its time. No movie had ever been cut that way, and no one had ever tried actually to get down and dirty in that specific way of just real scuzz. With these two characters who were not just down at the heel, but seriously down at the heel. They couldn't pay the phone bill.
Bill Cosby is Hickey. Robert Culp is Boggs.
Frank, will you come on?
Hey! With the legislation coming out of Sacramento the last couple of years, you guys are nothing but process servers.
It's not about anything. It's not about anything.
Yeah, it is. It's about 400 grand.
Hickey and Boggs aren't cool, slick heroes. They're worn, tough men, and that's what makes them so dangerous.
I know these guys better than I know you. You pull a gun, you gotta be ready to kill somebody.
Well, what the hell else we got to do?
When they come up against professionals, they hold their .44 Magnums in both hands, and they keep shooting until they hit something, anything.
I gotta get a bigger gun. I can't hit nothing. How are we gonna explain this one?
This time we need a lawyer.
Bill Cosby is Hickey, and Robert Culp is Boggs, in their first feature film together. Hickey and Boggs, they'll knock you out of your seat.
We both felt very strongly about the material, and we were wrong. I remember when I showed this picture to Bill the first time, he was playing in Vegas. I took it to Vegas, showed it to him in a theater in the middle of the day. The theater was dark, but I took the 35 millimeter print and we ran it in this theater, and there was just about 6 of us. And he didn't sit near me. He went way down in the front, and he sat near the front, and I sat almost in the back. And he had a couple people with him, but that's all. And as he passed me on the aisle, on the way out, he said, I remember vividly, he said, I just wish you had let them up. And that was a reflection of the way most of the audience saw it. They didn't want to see us down at the heel. They wanted to see Kelly and Scott. They wanted to see bright. They wanted to see sophisticated. They wanted to see cute and clever and so forth. And today, if we released that movie, we'd make some money with it.
Yeah.
But we sure didn't. We opened and closed in a single weekend.
Was that basically your cut on that film, Bob?
Yeah, 100%.
Great. That's great. Do you have any personal favorite roles or material that you've written that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I'm doing a picture now, as you may have observed from the beard. I haven't worn a beard like this since, 71, when I did a picture with, or Western with Raquel Welch. I'm doing a picture now called Karma Police. Nobody's ever heard of it, but you will. Karma Police is a comedy that is so far out on the curve, I don't even know how to describe it. You've never seen anything like this before. And we're almost done with it. 2 more days of shooting. But we've had to close down for a short period of time. Usually that means, oh, they ran out of money.
Right.
Actually, that isn't the reason, but might as well be. And we're going to finish up toward the end of this month. Karma Police is a very, very funny movie to start with. But I never had so much fun since I Spy. I'm telling you the truth now. I'm proud of what I did in '93 with the Pelican Brief and playing the president and all that stuff, because it was terrific. But this is more like I Spy than anything I've ever run across since. And the story is weird, and the comedy is remarkable. And keep it in the back of your mind, because Karma Police is something that's really going to tickle you when it does come out. It doesn't have a distribution deal yet. We're going to have to do all the festivals and all that junk. But it'll be fun. I'll be surprised if they get past one festival without somebody snapping it up.
Yeah. So any idea when they may start showing it at festivals, Bob?
I'm sorry?
Any idea when they may start showing it at festivals in 2004?
Well, sure, this fall, as soon as they've got a finished print. And I don't think the score is finished, and we're not even finished yet.
You want to tell them a little bit about your role?
I play the oldest car repo man in the world. And I'm sent out to repo cars for the first time in 20 years from my desk job with a kid as punishment for the kid. Think about it. And everything we do kind of screws up. But by the end of the first night, we've repoed a car with a guy bound and gagged in the trunk. Turns out he's a great baseball pitcher, and in 3 days starts the World Series. So we can add 2 and 2 together and get blackmail and ransom and all that kind of stuff to the club. Turns out it isn't that at all, it's something else. He staged his own kidnapping. And then it develops into something else, and it becomes something else. It's kind of like a road movie inside of Los Angeles. A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Bob, let's quickly talk about the DVD releases of I Spy. Volumes 20 and 21, the Robert Culp collection.
Boxes 20 and 21 of the DVD releases for I Spy are all the shows that I wrote and or directed. And they're terrific. All of the shows that you saw a piece of here, I wrote 7, including that one called So Long Patrick Henry,
right.
Which was the first one on the air. And there are commentaries to go on. So they're very carefully designed.
On those commentaries, Bob, I had somebody write to my discussion list about them saying they were one of the most fearless and entertaining commentaries, and I feel the same way. Some people shouldn't do commentaries, Bob. These commentaries have insight, they're full of anecdotes, but there was a lot of power in them as a storyteller.
Well, I was writing a book, and I was trying to write an I Spy book at the time this thing came along, and I realized I wasn't going to finish it. Or if I did, I wasn't sure anybody would want to publish it. And so I simply took all of that material and applied it by breaking it down to the episodes, the 7 episodes that I was supposed to do commentaries for. And I'm in it, it was like warts and all. I did admit that Sheldon and I didn't always see eye to eye.
Right.
We disagreed strongly about some stuff, but that he was the boss, and I would follow him into hell, and said so. I was lucky to have met him and known him in my life, even though we didn't always agree.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful stuff, Bob, and you're just an incredible storyteller, and you really are one of my personal heroes. I don't know, how much time do we have left, folks? We're going to take some questions from the audience. Anybody want to ask Bob some questions before Bob turn the channel?
We got 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
3 minutes for your favorite question.
Right here, Sam Fan.
Yes.
Can I talk in this one? You've done 3 Zane Greys. My personal favorite is Calico Bait with Inger Stevens. I just adore that. I don't know if you remember it very well, but there's one scene, somebody comes up behind you and he's about to attack you and you're holding a glass of alcohol in your hand and you do this amazing thing where you hit him in the face with it, you toss the glass back and he gets drenched in alcohol in the face and you draw your gun at the same time. And even if you try to slow track it, it's the fastest thing I've ever seen. And even a kid that I've shown it to, it just knocked their socks right off. Do you remember that at all?
No.
Oh, darn. It is amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it sounds
Well,
amazing.
you also also one of the first people, now I forgot about this because I could walk into the room and forget why I'm there. You're one of the first guys on film to do martial arts moves in I Spy, from so long Patrick Henry.
Yeah.
Were you practicing? I know James Coburn was.
I did. A friend of mine who was a hairdresser, who was murdered the night that Sharon Tate was murdered, introduced me to Ed Parker, who was the Kenpo genius and really got martial arts started in the United States. Ed was one of the nicest dudes I ever met in my life and one of the sharpest. He did a demonstration outdoors under a lovely pine tree, I remember, a fir tree, at this gentleman's house for Kaz and me, and we watched, and when we drove away, and we thanked the gentleman and so forth, when we drove away, Bill said, you can do this if you want to, but I'm just going to punch him in the jaw. And I said, okay, well, I'll see what I can do with it. And I started to study with Ed Parker, but all of a sudden, we got closer to production, and my world went upside down, and I wasn't able ever to get with it enough to look even halfway decent. So when I saw what I saw of me doing that stuff in So Long Patrick Henry, I said, I'm not going to do this anymore because I just look like an idiot. Because I don't know how to do this stuff, and I'm not going to be able to learn it because I don't have enough time. So I didn't even learn to play tennis for Christ's sake until after this series.
Well, after the first episode, Bob, when we guys in the tennis court.
Right. Well, I did learn the moves, but I couldn't play the game.
Yeah. Well, you certainly look good moving to me. I don't know. I bought it. Okay. Any last questions? Yes, sir.
As a writer and director, have you ended up on a set and found yourself in conflict with the script and director because of your own experiences and want to do a little bit better? And has it ended up with conflict or ended up with good things? Or
yeah, I don't know how many of you have got that clearly. Is there conflict when you wind up on a set with a director who and a piece of material that is at odds with what you know? Yeah, sure, that's going to be a problem. That's a problem with anybody. You either swallow it and do the best you can, or you bring production to a screeching halt, which I've also done from time to time. It never, ever, ever happened on I Spy. But I've had it happen to me in other things like MOWs, where there was an MOW. Christ, I can't remember. I'm king of it. I believe I am king of the MOWs. I don't think anybody has done as many as I have in a starring role. I was neck and neck with David Jansen, and Jansen checked out, and I kept making MOWs, so I think I got the record probably. Yeah, it has happened. Sure.
It's great. Yes. Debbie?
Mr. Culp, please comment on the show logo.
Sorry.
Your shoulder.
She's talking about the famous shoulder roll.
Oh. I'd like to be able to say I stole that from Toshiro Mifune, but he used to do both of them, roll them both. I didn't. But I'll tell you, it's really weird. You know, I did 12 years on the stage before I ever did a foot of film. I had been working on the stage steadily, unbroken, since I was 14, until I got to Los Angeles and did something on film for the first time, and that was in 1956. Well, when 57, the beginning of 57 rolled around, I did this Zane Grey Theater, which was just work, because I told my manager and my agents, for God's sake, if you can get me work, get me work. I've been poor for so long, please, anything that pays. I just give me money. anything.
Yeah.
So I went out and very quickly did this Zane Grey Theater, where I was supposed to ride into town and get off the horse. I couldn't even do that. I lied and said I could ride, but I couldn't. When I finally got the job in Tracktown, I had to come out 2 weeks early to learn how to ride, at least enough to be able to get on and off a horse. At the very end of Badge of Honor, that was the name of the episode, from Zane Grey Theater. At the very end of it, when he does whatever he does with the
little weapon he had, the bowl thing.
With the badge, he turns and walks away, and as he's just going out the door, he rolls one shoulder. I have no idea where that came from, but I know that I liked it, and what's more, Sammy Davis liked it, and if Sammy liked it, I knew it was a move to keep. And that's how that started.
And he said he could never copy it.
You know, anybody can copy it, but...
Bob, I want to thank you for being here, for being the man that you are, for being the artist that you are. I don't want to embarrass you. I'm sorry, man. I love you very much. Thank you, Bob.
McGregor, my dear friend.
Everyone, please stay. We have a special presentation from Mr. Culp.
Mr. Culp, on behalf of your fans, I say this truly from my heart. I throw it at your feet. It's my great pleasure, and I mean my great pleasure, to present you with this Fan Appreciation Award, an appreciation of your individuality and uniqueness as an actor, a director, and a writer, for all your effort and commitment to your craft. We thank you for bringing us so much pleasure and enjoyment over your long and diverse career. Your talents are much appreciated and admired by your many and wide-ranging fans. Thank you. You're going to be able to read the quote much better than I can.
That's right. Oh, I got it.
Okay, well, this is not as embarrassing to you as it is to me. Fan Appreciation Award 2003, Robert Culp. A whole history of activity, laughter, and shouting about the chairs. Finally, at the end, only one job remains: the act of winning. To win, the job must finish alone.
Thank you, Robert. I want to thank two other people. I want to thank Paul Scrabble. That's why you get to see those film clips of my spy. And I want to thank Debbie Lazar, because without her, Bob probably wouldn't be here. I probably wouldn't be here. And SPYFEST wouldn't be anywhere near as entertaining. Thanks a lot, folks.
Mr. Robert Culp and Don McGregor. Let's give a nice big round of applause for Mr. Robert Culp's first convention appearance. I hate to interrupt this session of girl power, but I think there's some gentlemen that are actually back from the restroom that want to invade your little discussion here. So without any further ado, Dr. No himself, Timothy Monson, David Harrison from Living Let Die, License to Kill, and Mr. George Lazenby. A James Bond in the house.
Joining them, the only man to play first side 2 times. He's been edited in Warrior Survival Scene to about every TV show I've ever seen in my entire life, every movie. He's here to Pedic on stage, the one and only Hollywood legend David Hennison, still standing.
All right.
This stage has never had it so good. And again, we don't need to moderate this one. If we're really quiet, I think our celebrities will be intimate, and we all promise we won't tell anything they say or record it, right?
Except, I used to date him too.
Oh.
That's true.
I'm going to give the mic to Mr. Moxon with the first question. And we'd love some audience questions. If you can't think of an out-of-the-box question in this group, you're like dead. Okay? Tim, you've been on the ship before. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, indeed. This wonderful, wonderful British ship. And 60 years ago, I traveled on her from Greenock in Scotland to New York. And there were a lot of little airmen on board who were training in Canada. And the Queen Mary went from Greenock to New York, as I say, and then we went by train up to Moncton, New Brunswick, and across to Alberta, and learned how to fly an aeroplane, and then the serious stuff got flying, and we went back to England and through. We need somebody strong. That's yours and me. Okay, but
thank you.
She was painted grey, of course, in those days, you know, and I think they took the sailing out of the ship. And she went quite mad across the Atlantic. And I don't think she ever got troubled at all by the submarines or anything like that. And she did it in about 3.5 days to New York, which is not bad going. And all of us, the airmen, were down in the holds, in bunks, stacked up, you know. And as we went past the Statue of Liberty going into New York, one of the little utility airmen standing by my side, looking over the taffrail, looking at this wonderful thing. Of course, 1943 was a bad year for the English anyway, you know, the British, I should say. And he looked up at the Statue of Liberty and he said, "Blimey, Timothy, that's Britannia holding an ice cream cone." I said, "No, I didn't." Anyway, it's not very funny. And that's about it. Anybody else? Come on, Joe. Let's have I was going to say, let's have a real star, have a big Timothy.
I know, I should have been a pop singer. Yeah. No, Maud will tell you, I'm not a talker. She's a talker. Yeah. Sure.
How did it feel, how did you feel about stepping into someone else's shoes, so to speak? How did you feel as an actor? How did it affect you to be taking over such an immense role?
Does that interest anyone out there? Yeah, you're right on. Well, first of all, I was in a state of shock, probably. I didn't know it, you know, because you just thought you got lucky all of a sudden. Because it was a long period, it was over a period of 4 months. From the first day that I met the Bond people until they said, "We're going with you." That was Harry Saltzman, he was from America. And I said, "It's about time." He said, "What?" I said, "Thank you very much."
And
literally, that's what happened. And it was right after I did this stunt fight, and I'd knocked this guy on his backside, and he stuck his chin out, and I was supposed to miss it, and I didn't. And I was picking him up, and I'm sorry, because he was a real fighter, and I was just a fake one. I thought, when he comes to, he's going to hurt me, you know. And so he ended up working on the film. He was a very nice guy. And what was his name? Big Russian wrestler guy. Yeah, Yuri. That's him. He was a very, very gentle man. You know. I know if someone did that to me, I might have something more to say. And then being James Bond, yeah, it changed my life. It still has. I can't get away from it. I've never done anything that's bigger than that film. It's hurt me as an actor, but on the other hand, I didn't really want to be an actor in the first place. A golfer. I only discovered that about 6 years ago. I've got infatuated by golf. I thought that's what I wanted to be, a golfer. And I played in a rock band in Australia in the 60s. I loved that. Remember Paul Joy and the Joy Boys? Well, our band used to play in their intermission. Yeah, you know, it was used to come down from Canberra, and we'd play it. And then Lonnie Lee, another Australian singer, stole our guitar player, which was the guts of the band. And so, and by the way, that's who I wanted to be, but he was better. So I was the bass player. And now bass players are pretty clever. But not, I just knew guitar boogie in every key. You know, what song are you gonna play? Yeah, boom, 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 boom. That was rock and roll in those days, you know, the 50s and 60s. But that was my first time in show business. So I was headed that way anyway, you know, by being on stage and then modeling, which was really bizarre for me because I always thought the people in the pictures were people that were caught buying a car or, you know, that's how naive I was about this modeling business. And then when I found out what you're getting paid for it, I gave up selling cars to become a male model. I made more in a month than I did in a year selling cars. And as a matter of fact, I made more in modeling. And she was the star of the show, and I was a comedian, James Bond, who kept getting into trouble, falling into swimming pools and stuff while I was chasing after her. And that was in Italy. I don't know what happened to those commercials. They could be fun to watch. Yeah. God. And so I was heading that way anyway. And someone else said that I was in a pose with a gun and all that, doing a James Bond thing. So thanks to my mom and dad, I looked a bit like Connery. And then the original question was, how did I feel stepping into his shoes? Well, I had nothing to lose. I was just a loose cannon from Australia running around Europe having fun. And this sounded like more fun. But as anyone can tell you, I don't like to work a lot. And this was a lot of work. I mean, you had to learn bloody lines, for Christ's sake. To come up with an American accent here now? James Bond doesn't talk like an American. No, I was Australian. I had an Australian accent, just like you.
Scottish accent, if anything.
Yeah. No, I sound like a bushwhacker from Queanbeyan. And they said we're going to do something about his walk and his talk. Because he doesn't sound like James Bond, he doesn't walk like James Bond, but he looks like him if he's standing still. That's what they told him.
Good day, Bluey.
And so, and he's arrogant enough to play the part. That was another thing they said. So they said I had to walk like Prince Philip and talk like an Englishman, which I frowned on at the time. We always felt Englishmen were inferior in Australia. We always got the poor ones. The ones we saw in Australia were immigrants who didn't have a lot of cash, and so we frowned on them, you know, and they frowned on us. Like my mother, when I was going to England, she said to me, "Why are you going to England?" I said, "My girlfriend's over there and she won't come back." And they said, "Well, I wouldn't go over there, son, if I were you." I said, "Why not, Mum?" She said, "That's where all the convicts came from." So, anyway, back to the Sean Connery shoes. There was never a time that I felt inferior to Sean Connery, except as an actor. I mean, the guy could blow me away as an actor because he was a serious actor. But me, as a physical person from Golden, we were taught, don't be afraid of anybody. You know, just go in. My mother threw me off a high board when I was about 5 because I go, "No, I don't want to go off." "Yes, you do." And so she took the fear out of me about anything, you know, just have a go. And I remember I was in the office with Broccoli and Salzman, and they said, what's your body look like?" And I took off my clothes right there. They said, "No, I'm not taking them all off, put them back on." But I know they wouldn't have a look, so I'll take them off. And they got embarrassed. I mean, I wouldn't. Did they see the guy before me? But that's how I was. I was very naive from the country. Yeah, well, my legs were too skinny. I remember I was in a skirt, the Scotsman said that his legs are too bloody skinny to be in a kilt. He should have should put pants on him or something. I forget what they. But they were very offended by my antics in the kilt because someone asked me to have anything underneath, and I did one of those whoops things at the back. Yeah. And I did have underpants on. So they thought it was very poor taste. If I had nothing on, they would have gone for it. Because the Scots are a pretty tough crowd. Thank you. Now I'm going to pass this to somebody. This feels like.
David, does anybody have a question for David?
Let's hear it.
Okay, I want, okay, then, does anybody? Say, oh, okay, yes?
David's coming down here in a minute. Well, Diana Rigg, she was a serious actress. And as you know, I wasn't a serious actor. So we kind of, she helped me out a lot, put it that way. But I've never taken life as seriously as Diana did, as you know, the work. And we had some fun at the beginning of the show, and then towards the end we got a couple of arguments. You know, we've been working together for about 6 months, and I remember one day Diana and Peter Hunt were in drinking champagne, and the office was a shop front window, and we could see them. We were sitting out there in, I don't know, below freezing. I was okay, I was in the car with the heater on, but all the crew was sort of stomping around waiting for her to come out. And finally she got in the car, and I said, Jesus, we got no feeling for these poor bastards out here freezing to death and all that. And she jumped out and said, he's picking on me, he's going for me. And I said, it got me into a bit of trouble there, but other than that, she's quite a lady. I mean, she can drive. I mean, I was amazed in that, on that ice track. We're coming up the gate, she had to turn it sideways and go out, and we had a camera on the side, and I said, you're not gonna make this. Boom, straight through without touching anybody. Wow. She was doing the drive on the ice track, and you have to anticipate the turn because the car, once you turn, it turns early. You got about 100 yards before the turn. You got to just give the wheel a little twitch and it starts to turn, and then accelerate it. I was impressed. And then Telly, well, he was one of these guys. You know, Peter Hunt, the director, said to Telly, you know, help George out, and wherever you can, you know, where you see he needs help in the scenes. And Telly's way of getting out of that was the first time we did a scene, he said, he don't need any help. So he didn't like to work either. So he had a bunch of guys with him, you know, his brother. I wouldn't say they're hanger-ons, they were just good guys that he carried around with him, and they'd gamble whenever they had a chance. In between takes, out would come the cards, and away they go. And they got me in there one day, and I never played poker on the level they played it, but I used to get this per diem in cash. And being on a mountain, you don't spend it. You know, James Bond gets everything for free anyway. So I'm sitting up there with a briefcase full of cash, and I opened it one day and Telly saw it, he said, hey, you play cards? Come over here. So I'm sitting down with Telly playing these cards, learning at about $100 a throw. And Harry Saltzman, who'd lost a fortune gambling and swore off it, came along and saw that Telly was raking in all my cash. And he tapped me on the shoulder, I want to take your spot. And Telly goes, no! Because usually in this game we're playing, the guy with the most money wins. And there's no way. And Harry got all my money back and threw it in the briefcase and said, Telly, leave my boy alone. And so I like that. And, but, you know, Telly was a fun-loving guy.
Can I just say something before I give this to David? I think you all know that Roger is my Bond, no matter what you say. But I also think I want to make one note, which is the fact that George Lazenby has been said by many critics and many fans around the world to be the most authentic James Bond. And he's been praised for his performance. And although he only did one, he was a good guy.
Yeah. How he can say that he's not an actor after all his performance in that picture, I cannot believe it. That it's, you know, film acting is an art in itself. And my secretary, before I left Jamaica the other day, she said, "You're going to meet Mr. George Lazenby?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Tell him he was the greatest after Sean Connery." I said, "After Sean Connery? What are you talking about?" Bless your heart, George.
Hi. At last. You know, everyone is always asking me, they say, "Why did you change your name from Al to David?" And I said, well, look, for the first 3 films that I made, I was Al Hedison. It was The Enemy Below with Bob Mitchum, then The Fly, and then Son of Robin Hood. Well, then NBC wanted me for a series called Five Fingers with Luciana Paluzzi. And I was under exclusive contract to 20th Century Fox at the time. And NBC said, "We cannot make a star with a name like Al Hedison. It's ridiculous." This was 1958. So they asked me what my middle name was. I said, David. So they switched to David. I had met with Tom Mankiewicz before I did the first one. And Tom Mankiewicz wrote the screenplay, and he told me about the part of Felix Leiter. And I thought I was going to be doing it with Sean. But then the very last minute, Sean decided he wasn't going to do it. And then that's when Roger stepped into the part. And so that's how that came about.
Can you tell us like a really good practical joke or flub that really brought the house down when you left?
Much too filthy, I couldn't tell you. But it was great fun working with Roger and with Timothy, both.
Quick question to Mr. Lazenby. Isn't it true that you, right before the audition of you playing the character of James Bond, the day before you cut your hair to make you look like James Bond, and you bought a tuxedo and you wore it to the audition?
Well, no, it's not exactly like that. What happened was, again, it's fate. Because if they'd have interviewed me the first day I was supposed to go there, the reason I went there was because I went out with an agent by accident who was supposed to go out with a friend of mine. His girlfriend came back into town. He said, "Geez, you gotta help me out. I'm double dated." So I went out with this agent, and she put me up for the role, but I wasn't a member of the union or anything. She said, "You gotta go in there by yourself and introduce yourself." And I'd never done this before, so I went in the door and I got thrown out of there because I wasn't on the list. I said, "They wouldn't let me in." "Of course they won't let you in. You gotta get in." But when I was in there, I noticed that the way the guys were dressed and everything, and they were all waiting to be interviewed. So I heard that Broccoli, Connery got his hair cut underneath the Dorchester Hotel in the back there. And I had long sideburns because I'd been living in France, and long hair, so I went and got a short haircut. I already owned a Rolex watch. And I found out off Kurt the barber where Sean got his clothes made. And I went there and they told me it takes 6 months to make me a suit. But they've got one suit left over that Connery didn't want or didn't like or something. And all they had to do was make the arms 1 inch longer. And so I got that on and I'm looking exactly like I wanted to look. And I went back to the place where they were interviewing the guys, and it wasn't an interview day. There was no one in there, just the girl. And she's the one that threw me out of there. And I'm sort of behind the wall, and she bent down behind the desk to get something. And I went, "Long faster up the stairs. What are you doing?" And the guy up the top of the stairs was Dyson Lovell. And he's the casting director at the time. I think he's a producer now. And I just stood on the door with my arms crossed, and I said, "I heard you're looking for James Bond." And I was keeping a straight face while I was doing that. And he was on the phone to Harry Saltzman, and that was, again, fake, because if he'd interviewed me for 5 minutes, he'd have found out I was a fake. So he said, I said, "I come to play James Bond for you." And he said, "Harry, there's a guy here that looks just like Sean Connery." He's got that. And Harry said, "Send him over." They were desperate for somebody. And so Dyson's saying to me, what's your life story? And I walked across the road to Harry's office. And I told him I had been an actor in Russia and Hong Kong and all these places. But they couldn't check on it, like in 5 minutes. And so I got in the office, and then Harry's got his feet up on the desk, like this. And he points at the chair, he's on the phone. And I won't sit in front of someone who's got their feet up my face, so I walked over and looked out the window. And then he put his feet down, hung up the phone, and then stood up and said, have a seat. Then I went down and sat down. It's just because I don't like sitting in front of a pair of feet. You know, I did what he was telling me. And then he says, tell me your life story. And I said, he just asked me that. Let him tell you. Because I didn't want to get mixed up. So anyway, meanwhile, by this stage, I needed toilet paper. But I've got a straight face. I'm holding it all together. I'm not showing my nervousness. But it's a boardroom with offices, and I'm thinking, I've never been in a situation. I've been a model a couple, we get, little tiny offices. We go, this was like a big one, and he's talking to New York, and he's telling all these people to do this, do that. And meanwhile, I'm shitting myself. Excuse the French. But I'm keeping this straight face. So, anyway, he says, I want you to be, he said, where's Peter Hunt? And they said, in Switzerland, he's doing some reconnaissance for the movie. And Dyson said, well, he said, when's he coming back? He said, 4 o'clock tomorrow. He said he'd be in his office here. He said to me, be here at 4 o'clock tomorrow. I want you to meet Peter. And that's when I shit myself. I said, I can't. He said, what? I said, I can't be here. I'll be in Paris. I was getting out of there. I knew that this was too hot for me. I mean, these guys were just too ruthless. And so he said, well, what'll it cost you to be here tomorrow? What'll it cost us for you to be here tomorrow? I said, well, I get $500 a day. And he said, well, go down and see Stanley Sapel, who was the accountant who's now producer of football. And he'll give you $500 and be here at 4 o'clock tomorrow. So I go down there, and Stanley tries to give me $250. I said, no, see you. No, come back here. I'll give you $500. And he said, Harry, what are you paying this guy for to come back and see us? And, on the phone, he said, just give him the money. So I get out of my car, and I'm laughing my head off. What am I going to do when they ask me to act? I've never spoken in front of a camera before. So, yeah, they're coming. So that night, I'm running around town looking for an acting coach. I did. I found one. And he was fascinated by the fact that they were going to test me for James Bond film. He's given me an acting lesson. And I'm failing the test. So finally, I go there the next day, and I level with Peter Hunt. Because I went to his office first, and I said, Peter, I told him a whole bunch of lies. I'm not an actor. He said, what? He said, they made sure I had my butt here from Switzerland to meet you. He said, you convinced him. He said, you're an actor. You stick. I said, okay. So we go over it. He said, you stick to your story, and I'll make you the next James Bond. Peter. And I said, okay. So I went wandering across the road like two crooks. And literally, I was feeling guilty by this stage. I got their money, I'm lying, And so I get in the office, and Harry says, he's got my commercial up there, a Marlboro I did in France. He's done some research. He said, the guy's a clothes peg. Get him out of here. And I turned around to go, and I gave him the check. I said, here's your check back. And Peter said, I want to test it. He said, we'll be the laughing stock of the film industry testing a bloody... He kept calling me a clothes peg. A clothes peg for James Bond. I'm sure he meant clothes hanger. But anyway. Meanwhile, I was getting wild, too. I was getting mean. Because I didn't like being called clothes peg, you see.
What'd you tell him?
I didn't say anything. I was just getting a little hot under the collar. And the next thing, Peter said, well, we'll test him out at your house. Okay, but what about the crew? They're going to talk. He said, we'll get Samuelson himself come out there and do it, and blah, blah, blah. So we kept quiet for a month. They got me an Australian actress, so I wouldn't feel nervous. We tested out there, and no dialogue. Just jumping fences, riding horses, doing. And the funny thing, I used to surf a lot, and I could stay underwater forever. And Peter said, dive in the pool. You know, so I dive in the pool, and I come up the other end. And he said, no, I want you to come up before you get to the other end, so we can film you. And film this guy go out of the water. So, and then, and jumping fences, riding horses, all that was right up my street. You know, I could ride a bareback, it didn't matter to me. You know, brought up in Australia, keep station. So I just, this horse, I just jump on the damn thing and fuck its head off. I just hang on to its mane till it wind down and just ride over the fence. And they were fascinated by this. And they said, God, I have this guy. But he can't talk, he can't walk. We've got to do something about that part. And that's how it all started. 4 months later, they said, we're going with you.
Just a really quick question to everybody over there. Everyone here had good roles. You guys didn't go with Spectre. Would you have, maybe, if you had your all again, would you have played against James Bond? A role against Bond? You know, being on the good side that you were in the movies, would you have played on the bad side? That's all. Oh yeah, that's right. You were a double agent.
I mean, I was a bad guy, so I was a double agent, so.
I could be the bad guy.
I'm a bad guy.
That would be a good movie.
You're just naughty. I think they didn't know how to make up their mind about me because I was both.
Hi, for Mr. Lazenby certainly, but for all of you, if you had the chance to know him, would you mind sharing some memories of Q, Desmond Llewellyn, and who was with us for so many of the films? So if you have some memories or something you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it.
Well, since I got the mic, I answer first, and since I also had very little experience with him, unfortunately, I met him mostly socially at James Bond gatherings or in premieres. The way things were set up, I didn't have any scenes with him, so I never really got to work with him. But of course, he had a wonderful reputation. Everybody loved him, and from my short encounter with him, I thought it was a wonderful man as well. I didn't work with him.
It's all yours, Mr. Lazenby.
Oh, thanks. Q was a guy that came in for a couple of days and left. He did, on the film. He'd come in and he'd do his part and leave. And I was very disappointed to hear that after 6 or 7 films, they were still paying him scale.
You're joking, really? I've always said to everybody that he made a living out of James Bond.
Yeah, you think so.
Really?
But, you know, they were a tough crowd. Yeah. But he was, you know, as a personality, I wouldn't be a good guy to ask because, again, I worked with him for a couple of days. I worked with him for some time. And he was an old drunk, funny guy, good actor. But it was quite funny because I'm going to switch from Q to him. Is that all right? Because Desmond Llewellyn and I mean, I don't want to comment on someone I didn't know that well. All I can say is he's a sweet guy, and that's probably why they had him around. He was just a nice guy. No, with M. He'd come in the morning, and he'd be sober. And about half an hour later, he'd be drunk. And so they couldn't figure it out, where he was getting the booze from. And I had a booze cabinet in my, yeah, but it was for the press. It wasn't for me. Yeah. And they said to me, mind if we lock your cabinet up? I said, why? And I said, you know, I missed his name. What's his name? Yeah.
Charles Gray.
Bernard Lee. Bernard. He said, Bernard must be getting the booze out of your room. And I said, why? He said, well, look at him. He can hardly stand up. He's only been. And what they used to do is get one of the prop guys and hold him at the back. And he can act as clear as a bell. But he couldn't stand still. And he'd get up there and on cinemascope and go like this. Boom, boom. Bernard, I said, where you getting that stuff? Because I had a guy follow me, sneaking and watching him everywhere. And he'd come in to make up in the morning and always say he's going to kill himself and all that stuff, because he's had a bad night and everything else. But he's not serious, just dramatic, And they found out he had these big, thick German cups. Yeah, inside his jackets, and he'd pull them out and hit himself with a load of gin. And that's how he did it. But that's very James Bondish, isn't it? I would think. But Bernard Lee, again, a beautiful man.
Thanks for being here this evening. That closes it down for tonight. And come back tomorrow and bring some equipment to clear the 710.